Welcome to Splintered Spirits, a podcast hosted by me, Gary, and my nephew Johnny from Santa Paranormal, where we try to prove his theory that ghosts are the fractured memories of the living. My guest this week is Simone Key. Here in the States, we would most likely pronounce it Simone, but I learned we've been doing it wrong. Simone is a medium and a minister of the Spiritualists Nation Union. She was a tutor, that's a teacher, in the Arthur Findlay College in the UK, renowned for its advancement of spiritualism and psychic sciences. Miss Key was our friend, Kathy Nadal's instructor. Simone has decades of experience, and she's about to give me a crash course on the heart, maybe soul's a better word, a crash course on the soul of mediumship via her unique gifts, experiences, and beliefs. Let's dive into the conversation. We are here with Simone Key. Thank you so much for joining me on Splintered Spirits this evening for you, I take it.
Yeah, it is. And thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to it.
Simone, I got your name from a guest and friend of the show, Kathy Nadal, who really impressed us. And, you know, I don't want to make this about Kathy. I want to make this about you, because this is where I want to get deep into what you do and, and the world we're in. But I like to start this interviews now. I'm thinking about starting the interviews this way with my guests because I think it's fun. Simone, what do you think happens when we die, and what are spirits?
Okay. This is obviously what I'm about to say is, based on my experience, not of death, but of life.
I'd expect nothing else.
Basically, what I believe is that however we go, however we end our life on this planet, if you like, there's always those that meet us. No one's ever alone. And they're helped and they're supported to adjust to that transition from this world to the next. And what goes on, for me, what continues in life for eternity is our personality, our experiences, our understanding, and and the power of the spirit that's within us. And that power is the power that joins us all together in humanity, and with every living thing. So every animal, every bird, every plant, every tree, every mountain has all got the power of the spirit in it, and that spirit is, for me, is a much higher frequency of energy. And for some of us who are religious, it's part of the divine. You may call God or whatever you want to call that power. But for us, it's a higher power. And that power is a living force through everything that lives. And that power is within me and within you and connects us all together.
So do you believe in God?
I do. Yeah, I do now.
In the traditional sense of like the Catholic, like in a God is in like what the Christians or Catholics believe is God, or do you believe in God as something else?
I've never been a religious person. I'm a minister, and I'm a religious because spiritualism is my religion. Mm-hmm. But how I see it, that power is a much, much higher power. And it has a hold on us if we reach out to it. And we can use that power and to help us and support us and help us to help others as well.
Okay.
But it doesn't have a face. It doesn't have a name. It doesn't have an identity. It's a power. And on a much higher level. Yeah.
Okay. I like asking that question, because when we start talking about these things, it's helpful for me, and I probably for our audience, to understand where the answer is grounded in. Yeah. Right. In terms of, and it's great because we want to hear different points of view and what those things are. So just so the audience gets also a little bit familiar with you, I would love for you to just explain. I know you were a tutor at Arthur Findlay. Yes. So I'd love to hear if you can just tell us briefly, like, what is Arthur Findlay, and then what does it mean to be a tutor there?
Okay. I was a tutor there for over 30 years. And I was a student to start with. I used to go to the Arthur Findlay college as often as I could in terms of, taking time off from work, say sort of maybe 2 or 3 times a year. And then I trained to be a tutor. And obviously things change over years, but in my day, it would take you roughly 3 years to get in to teach, because obviously you want a very high standard of tutor. You know, and it's a place that's like no other in the world. And I have traveled a lot. It's a place where, you can walk in the door and you can feel the power of the spirit as you walk in the door. And of course, what it does is it brings together people all on the same wavelength, if you like. They're all looking for the power of the spirit, or they're all, looking to enjoy the power of the spirit as well. And so they go in, and obviously you have classes there, and that teach you everything from mediumship from intuition to mediumship to trance to healing. There's also a huge selection of courses there. But it's like no other place, I believe, and it has a wonderful reputation, but it earned that reputation through being, selective in the people that teach there. So you have to go through another kind of teacher training course to teach there.
Well, I'm going to probably jump around a lot because
Yeah,
this
that's right.
world is very new to me. And
Yeah, sure.
one of the things that I love about it, and talking to experts such as yourself, and I'm going to call you an expert, because if you got through that system and you have been doing this for 30 years and you were teaching others, to me, you're an expert in the field. So it's like, I want to know, as a complete non-expert, like,
Okay.
how do you know? Like, how? Here's a real simple question. Like, you're saying people walk in the door and it's a place where you feel the energy, you feel the spirit, they're looking for spirit. How do you know if they're a fraud? How do you know if they're a fake? Like, what's the, you know what I mean? Like, how do you spot a fake?
And that's a hard one because, unfortunately, frauds are normally pretty convincing,
Yeah, they're
as
really
in
good
any
at it.
part of of the world. Um, the thing about extrasensory perception, which is what we're talking about here, is that you can see beyond. You can see a person. I could be looking at you, and I can feel it. I can see it. I can know it. That's the difference. So if somebody comes in and they say things like, oh, I'm such an amazing medium, I can do this and this. My first thought is, not necessarily what I would say, but my first thought is, okay, I'll believe you when you prove it.
So it feels like, in a way, it's like it takes one to know one.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, in the real
Yeah.
simple form,
No,
right? Like, it's sort of, you
yes.
feel it, you get
Takes
it.
one to know one. Yeah.
And now, okay, and when you when you find someone, and like they come in and they do something, and it makes you, gives you the old dog whistle, and you like turn your head like, huh, maybe they've got something. What is involved in teaching? How do you hone that person?
Okay.
What would be
First
the first steps to hone that person's craft to make them better, I guess?
I think first of all, you have to assess. I don't want to use the word judge, but you have to assess as an individual on an individual basis. In other words, you have to. I look for potential. That's my main aim.
Okay.
So when I'm looking at a student, I'm looking for the potential, and hopefully helping them to recognize their own potential. You see, there are, of course, there's always going to be exceptions to every rule. So everybody, many people will come in and looking to see, where do I belong in the scheme of things, and am I sure I have an immortal soul, and all of those questions that come. But then my job is to look at them and be realistic, and say, look, I can see the potential you have for healing in a particular way, because there's lots of different ways you can heal.
Hmm.
And it may be, I'm talking about with mediumship, or I can see that you'd be a really good platform medium, giving messages from in a public arena, for instance. But I would have to be careful that somebody who was new wasn't overwhelmed with that information, because it can scare people,
Hmm.
but it could also have the opposite effect where it gives them so much confidence you can't live with them. I mean,
You can't live with them.
no.
That's funny. That is funny.
You know? Um,
Right. So it's like, so you're looking at them, and I guess this goes down to like some of the things you were talking about, or what you sort of specialize in. I was reading in your, your bio, like, you talk about trance a lot.
yes, I
Is
do.
trance is that different than, I guess, what I know the definition of channeling is, or is that the
I
same thing?
don't know because I think it's the same thing. I'm not sure. And the only reason is because there are words in the American vocabulary that are very different to the British,
For
and
sure.
that's one of them because we
Like
don't
elevator
use
and lift,
yes,
or
and we
line
don't
and queue.
yeah. Or pavement and sidewalk.
Yes.
But for us, you see, we don't. I don't use. I people I know that are Brits. We don't use the word channeling at
So
all.
tell us what trance is. What is trance?
Anyway,
And what's the
trance
basic
is
definition of that?
when the medium goes into an altered state of consciousness, when they allow themselves in their minds to be very passive, very subdued, and with it's a working relationship. It's not just the spirit world coming in and grabbing hold of somebody, but together they have a consent, which is that they subdue their thinking mind, so the spirit comes to the fore of their mind and takes control of their thinking with consent. That's what happens.
Is that dangerous?
No, not at
Okay.
all.
Okay.
No.
All
No,
right.
not at all.
Uh,
And
and
it's
and
just
so
because you've always got that you've always got control. No matter how much you allow the spirit to take control, you've always got control. It's your
okay.
decision. Yeah.
And then what is so then when you were saying, when you look at someone then, and it's like, okay, you would be good at either like, is what are the different sort of forms of like, of trance in mediumship? You talk about healing
Mm.
versus, guidance, or what is sort of, is there a difference in sort of how you guide a
Yeah,
particular
because,
student, if you
so for
will?
instance, what I see with you, I would see on an intuitive level, on an everyday level. I would see that from my intuition. Whereas if I was in trance and the spirit world would see you from many different aspects that I wouldn't see you from. So they would, if I was working with, say, healing, I get out of the way, basically, let the spirit do the work because they know where the healing is needed. The person might tell me they've got a problem with their knee, but it might actually, the problem may come from their back, and or it could be through some kind of psychosomatic illness, because we know the world is full of that. So if you've got a psychosomatic illness, there's no point treating the issue. You've got to treat the mind, and that's where the spirit world comes in. They have much more of an understanding of what goes on with us than we do. They see it from a different standpoint, from an overall standpoint, whereas we see it more locally, if that makes sense.
Is this different than when you sit with a medium and they sort of are just relaying messages
It
to
is
a
different
person?
because it's a different
What's
energy.
that called? Is that called something different?
Well, yeah, that's called communication, spirit
Just
communication.
just straight
Yeah,
communication. Okay.
mediumship. That's called mediumship, basically.
Okay,
Where they
that's
just sit and just give messages. Yeah,
got it.
that's just
Okay.
mediumship. Yeah. Whereas this is mediumship. Of course, it's all mediumship, but it's on a different state. It's not. I'm not going to say to you for 1 minute one's better than another. They're different,
Sure.
and they have different purposes. Because if you're working as a medium and you're not in a position where you can go into the stillness and into the silence, then you're not going to be able to you're going to have to work in the way that you work, which is everyday consciousness. Whereas if I want to go into a healing, into a deeper way, then I will go into the trance state. But I just know that there's room for everybody in this. That's the point. As
Got it.
long as somebody wants to help somebody else, to me, it doesn't matter how you do it, as long as it's
Oh, okay.
beneficial.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Yes. That makes sense. Um, what is, you brought up something. Is there a difference? And this is me learning getting a crash course in mediumship from you, in a sense. Is there a difference between mental versus physical mediumship?
Yes. Yeah.
What does that mean?
Mental mediumship is, as you say, is all about mind, so when the spirit communicates, if I was to give you a message from the
Okay.
spirit, they would blend with me, with my energy, and they would think to my subconscious mind, and my subconscious mind then transforms those thoughts into clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience. That's how it works. So in other words, clear seeing, clear feeling, clear hearing.
Okay. Thank you
Yeah,
for defining those three 25-cent words that I was gonna have to look up later. I
that's
appreciate that highly. All right,
that's okay.
perfect.
But that's
Yeah.
how it works, that's how it works, with that. So sorry, I just forgot your question now. What was it
No,
yours?
no, it's between mental and physical
Oh, a
mediumship. Like,
physical
what is
mediumship, right, okay. So everything that I do is mental mediumship,
okay.
and, that's how it is. But some people work with physical mediumship, which, to be honest, I would rather not go into too much detail about because I'm not totally convinced of it.
So
So
it's more rare. That's a very
and
rare sort of
it's very rare, and genuine physical mediumship is very rare.
okay.
And medium and physical mediumship is what happens on a physical level. So in other words, if you move your lamp from one side of the table to the other, if that's moved and nobody's there to move it, no hands are on it, then that's a form of mediumship. But
You mean like telekinesis or something weird, like
yes.
moving
Yeah.
things that are just with your
It
mind?
can see, it still can be, it just moving stuff can still be our own physical energy can do that, especially if you watch people who get very angry, very upset, their energy can fill a room. I can walk into a room and feel that someone's had a massive row in there. And then somebody else might say, "Oh, the spirit's not very happy," and blah blah blah. It's nothing to do with the spirit world, it's to do with our world.
All right. All right. And now with that now so and there's a I'm going to get to where I'm going with this and understanding all
Okay.
these things. So how would you define tarot cards?
They're just tools.
Okay.
They're
That's a
just tools.
tool for for that's a tool for like mediumship.
Yes, absolutely, because
Okay.
what you would use them just to give you guidance on what perspective to see within an individual.
Is it what do you think of tarot card reading? Do you find that is there stock in it or you don't have an
It's
opinion one with it?
it doesn't do anything for me, but I can see that for a lot of people, because it's a science, that they're very interested. But we've got to remember that there's a lot of stuff out there that we can't all like at the same time, you know. But I can see that, if it's somebody can be very interested in them, and and those images on cards can help them define where to look within the person, you know.
Now, the
But
reason I like talking about like this using these tools because one of the things on this podcast is with my nephew, who I do this with. He's been doing this for probably about for a long time, but he's been on TikTok for as long as TikTok's really been popular for about 4 or 5 years. He's got a
okay,
million followers, and I don't know if you've had a chance to watch. And he sits there he's live right now, um, and he's out there. The weather's nice, so he's probably cleaning headstones. He has a phone app where spirits you know it sort of manipulates radio waves and the magnetic waves into speech that are spirits and the response and look, let me say this because always everyone's like, oh, it's an app and it's probably programmed to do it, and maybe it is, and that's
yeah,
all fine,
yeah,
but it's like the thing that I'm always that wows me about it that I don't have an answer for. Well, there's two things. One, the consistency of it. He
right,
gets responses and other people copycat him. You can find them all over the internet. They don't get what he gets. And personality, because he can go to a location and he'll be like, "Oh, if we go down there, there's a real nasty ghost named Edward down there. He's going to make fun of me the whole time." And it happens every time.
okay,
And it's like, and he doesn't keep his locator on the phone. The geolocation's off, so
yeah,
to save battery and all that. So it's not like it's tracking and the app is then figuring out like do this the same time, right? So and it'll say things like literally like say John is an asshole. Like you'll hear that come through, and it's not pre-programmed. People probably think it's pre-programmed. I don't really care whether they believe me or not. It's
no, it
not,
doesn't matter,
and
yeah,
it's like, and it's just. it's hysterical to me. We laugh, we have a laugh about it. He approaches it in a totally different,
Mm.
vibe. So for somebody, and I'm saying to him, like, dude, I think you're some kind of medium. Like, I don't know
Mhm.
what kind of medium you might be. I don't know how you test for this or what you do, but
Yeah.
what you get is unlike what other people with the same. Anybody can download this app. If I downloaded it, you'd hear voices and stuff, but it wouldn't be the same. And it's like you get a call and response. You get what's your when he approaches grave. So he does cemetery walks. He does these graves walks. He never reads the headstones. He always asks what the name is because he doesn't want the app to then like hear what he says and then just regurgitate a word back.
Yeah.
So it's like he's been doing this long enough where he knows not to do that. So he'll do it. What's your name? And it'll be whatever it says, Kathy or Simone. And you're like, and then he looks and he finds the grave with the name on it. And it's crazy. And it's all live.
Mm.
He's doing it live. It's not pre-done. He's just like,
Yeah.
and it's when it happens, and it doesn't happen like with every time. He's out there for 8 hours a day. And it's like he might get 3 moments of like, oh my God, that's a real thing. So I'm like, is this guy a medium or not? Does he have something? And if he does, how do I how do I fine tune it? How do we hone that craft? How do we strengthen it? How do we
I think
prove
one of
it?
the things I would have to say first and foremost is that because he has let's say a penchant for graveyards,
Yeah.
it may be that that's his niche in terms of where his mind goes. He has made, and please don't think I'm speaking for him, but it
No.
may be that he connects a graveyard with dead people. I couldn't even tell you the last time I went to a graveyard. It would be at least 50 years ago. So it's not something I'm interested in.
Hmm.
I know the spirit isn't there because when they talk to me, they're always talking to me about life, not death, and they're never in the ground anyway. So, but it may be because he has a feeling of spirit when he's there that brings it to him, if that makes sense to
It,
you.
well, that's positive. I'll tell you. Let me tell you what his philosophy on spirits are. He has
Mhm.
his does not come from a
Yeah,
religious place or perspective or divine. We all have energy in our body. He does agree with
yeah.
on the energy front. Like we literally have electrical synapses in our brain that are popping off all the time.
Mm,
Energy, cannot be created or destroyed. So he believes that when we pass, that energy that is in us is released, and our memories, because we still don't know how the mind officially works and what that
mm.
is attached to that energy. And he
Yeah.
believes he's talking to memories. So one reason why, and I brought this up, I said, well, dude, no one remembers what their grave is. You never see it. That's something that you can't be memory. But it's like one of the things that we think it might be is it still it would be connected to a memory, or it's a loved one's memory of that person who visits the grave,
Mm,
or it's an imprint somehow of that energy, or that's we don't know the answer to that, and nobody I don't know how we'd ever prove that, but we've that is sort of one thing that he believes in. That's how he approaches it. We have tried fun little tests with spirits. So he found he believes he has spoken to the spirit that's really mean to him. That's in this one haunted place. He found that he knows who owned the building, and then he found that person's grave, and he believes he found a younger version, another memory of that same
yeah.
spirit. So we told that one spirit a lie, and of who I was to one and not the other, and we told the other version that I was something else to see if the memories were connected. And then the other one uh, that we didn't tell called me uncle, and that we told him I was his brother. So
Oh,
we
I
told the
see.
other version. So it's like, and it was weird. It was crazy, right? Like, how did he know I was his uncle? Now, look, did it ever? We don't know if we ever slipped out that it was an uncle, or has he heard it before? We don't know. But we're just going from. We tried to do this relatively quickly from my first visit there, and it played out. So I don't know. That's that. Anyway, it's a long story. I'm rambling, but that's kind of where his belief of what spirits are, and that's how he approaches it. So it's like so if he does have some sort of medium ability in some
Mm.
capacity, you think from your interpretation of what spirits are, he could be literally luring them in through that phone app, or like, and
Yeah.
that's a tool that's sort of
Well, because he's open to it and he believes it and he's
he's open,
interested.
right? He has to
No,
be open and have the
yeah,
mindset.
absolutely, because if he's not, it wouldn't happen, you know? And he's obviously got to be sensitive as well. And so, because, there is a heightened sensitivity that comes with mediumship too. So, my thing is that I'm interested in the spirit because it can help us, it can support us, it can encourage us, it can be useful, and it can be helpful if you're in the depths of despair. But the greatest message there is for me is the fact that no matter how much you despair, no matter how alone you feel, no matter how isolated you are never alone. There are always minds there to help you. All you need to do is reach out. But when you're in that state, not many of us can remember to do that, you know?
Simone,
But they're all there.
do you practice regularly? Like, is it one of those things where if you don't use it, you lose it? Like, do you get yourself into a state of mind um to channel
Yeah,
or to
there
trance
has to
with
be,
spirit,
yeah,
or to
but
communicate with spirit regularly?
yeah, because I think in the beginning, especially, you do have to learn what frequency of energy you've got to link with, because it's all about energy. Our work is all about energy and it's all about frequency as well. And the mind of a medium is always the one that's fast. You don't get mediums who are slow. They'll talk far too fast or their actions are very quick and all
You're
of that
describing my
because
nephew quite a bit, by the way. I
oh
mean, no,
right,
but it's
okay.
like you really are.
Because
He's all over the place.
yeah, and that's because of the frequency of the energy that you align to, and that's the energy that you communicate is much faster frequency. And when you get into the trance state, when you start developing that, that's hard for the medium because you have to learn to subdue your mind and to subdue your thinking and be passive. And not many mediums can do that easily, So but there are certain techniques you can use,
Well,
but
what
that's
advice
how
would you
it
give him? Would you say to him, like, I know you've never met him, so don't like,
no, it's okay.
obviously I don't expect any direct answers, but it's like, hey man, you should try to meditate once a day. Like, is that something he should try to do? Like, what would be the first like thing, like, if you wanted to do something, here's step
Well, you see,
one.
I think because of my background, which was, I'm, this happened to me overnight. I was invited into what we called a circle in those days, a development group. I was absolutely over the moon. I was being invited. I got expelled after the first night because I asked too many questions. So I was then asked to go into another group and I got expelled after the first night in that one because I asked too many questions because people thought that the questions were confrontational and they weren't. I wanted to know everything.
Right.
And from then on, I had to develop on my own. And of course, I've learned from a lot of people. I've watched people, I've listened to people. But at the end of the day, it's all about you and the spirit world. They'll teach you. And I don't give advice. I really don't give advice. And the only piece of advice I ever give anybody is let the spirit world be your teachers. They're your
That's what
teachers.
I love that about you, that you ask a lot of questions and you take pieces of everything. Like, you know what? My wife would be so pissed that she thinks I should be in therapy, and I probably should, but I try to. When I did go to therapy once, I went to for the first therapist and they said, okay. And I tell them the thing and they're like, here, A, B, and C. And I'm like, oh, B makes sense. But then I went to a different therapist and then they were like X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, oh, I can, X, I'm going to take X from you. And then I went to another one, but I never went back to the same one twice. I'm like, I don't know, man. You guys don't know me, but I'm just going to take those things and see if I could
Yeah, see which one fits.
apply them to my life, and maybe make myself a better person. But
Yeah. But
it's
no,
great.
that I think that's the thing, and it's all about finding what's right for you as an individual. I didn't want to do this. That's the thing. I was an atheist. I didn't want
Well,
to do this.
I'm an atheist. Like both my nephew and I were raised the same way. We were raised Catholic.
Yeah.
And I would say we're both very atheist these days. You know, we're
Well, I
just
think I was very lucky. I was very, very fortunate. My mother was a Jew, my father was Presbyterian, and because of them having different religions, they said my sister and I were not allowed to have any religious education at home. We weren't allowed to go to Sunday school or anything else, you know.
yeah,
But we were told, we were brought up with the idea that you find your own religion if you want to. So
yeah.
I became an atheist. It was a lot easier. Life was a lot easier when I was an atheist, you know? So
But so what here? So I want to like tell. Can you throw out some examples over this? You know, this incredible life and experiences you've had that have kept you believing. You know, like I know I'm sure there's always been catalysts and that happened, but there's other things like, man, that is yep, that is
I
a moment.
first and
Is it,
foremost, I love the spiritual sense of humor with me. You know, they make me laugh a lot. And also it's about, what continues to convince me is the feeling I get when I'm in the power of the spirit. There's nothing like it in life.
can you
Nothing else
can
can
you tell
touch
me?
it.
Can you tell us a story
Yeah.
about when the spirits made you laugh? Like what happened?
Oh, they're very silly because don't forget it's me you're talking to. So
I
I
love
got very
silly. We love
strange.
silly. I'd rather silly than scared.
I
I
got a
love that
strange
stuff.
sense of humor. But I
Everyone
remember,
always is like
and I
ghosts
don't
and scares. I want to hear something fun. I mean, that's fun for me.
Yeah, no, I was working in Japan. I used to work there quite a lot, and I was working with a translator, and there was this little girl sitting opposite me waiting for a reading, and I was talking to her, and suddenly I saw a mango, a fruit, the mango,
Sure. Yeah, love
and
mango.
I looked at my friend who's a translator and said, I've just seen a mango. I don't know what the hell that means, not a clue. And then I realized, I said to the girl, have you just had a man go? And she went, yes, a man had left her. And that kind of thing makes me laugh, because there's absolutely no way I could look at a mango and see that.
Now, where so when you say you saw like you didn't see it physically, you saw it.
No,
How did you
just in
see
your
it?
mind's eye. You see it clairvoyantly. You see it in your mind's eye. Um, and it's I've got a I'm sorry, I've got a bit of a sick sense of humor. But another
No,
one was I was working at the Arthur Finney College, and I was working with, I don't want to make it too long a story, but I was working with trance communication, where it's in a trance state and the spirit communicator speaks through me to their loved one directly. That's how it works. Okay. So I'm going into the power, and as I'm going into the power, I can hear a voice through me saying, wow, wow, wow. And in my mind, I'm going, is that the best you can do? Is that it? I mean, this is horrific. I'm never doing this again. I am never doing this again. So, anyway, because I was in front of an audience, I just let the spirit do the rest. And this young girl came through wanting to talk directly to her mum. So at the end of the event, I thought to myself, I'm never going to do that again as long as I live. I was just so embarrassed, terribly embarrassed. And I went out of the room and I went into my own room. I came back in the morning and I was queuing up at the breakfast queue as we do. And this lady came over to me and she said, I just really want to thank you for last night. And I was so embarrassed, but I didn't want to say to her, well, actually, I thought it was a load of old rubbish because it was denying her daughter, you know. But I said, well, that's very kind, thank you. But she said, no, she said, do you remember when they said, wow, wow, wow? And I thought, I'm never going to forget that as long as I live.
sure.
I
Right.
went, yeah, I do remember. And she said, well, I used to email my daughter every day, and I used to sign it "wow" because in America it's mum upside down,
Oh
and
my
that
God, I just got
and that
chills from that.
and that completely turned me around in terms of working in that particular way. I would
That's
have given up.
so specific and wild.
Oh, absolutely, it has to be for me. It has to be specific, otherwise why bother?
Oh my God, I got chills
Yeah.
from that. That
We
freaks
we
me out.
oh, there's a few of us within this work, You know how you can go to someone and they can say, I can see that you've had a few bad times in your life. And there's been times when you felt you're completely on your own. And there's been times when you felt, could I trust these? Well, you can talk like that. I can talk to you like that for about
Yeah,
2 hours.
everybody's been there.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not saying anything. And we call that clairvagueness, you know?
Wait a minute. I gotta write that down. That is the best word of that's the word of the day. Claire vagueness.
Yes.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
Great one. That's a great one. Yeah, because right, that would be the hoax, right? That would be the charlatan. That would be the person who's like
Yeah.
trying to just like, you know,
Mm,
I get that for sure.
yeah.
Oh my God. Um, Simone, what does it mean now? So you're a minister now.
Yeah.
You don't work with Arthur Finley anymore, do you?
No.
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 So
No. Just
now you're a minister, and tell us tell us about spiritualism. Let's what are you up to now? How does this work? And are you still a practicing medium within that religion,
yes.
or is it just oh, okay? So tell me a little bit about spiritualism, and then I'd love
Well,
to know what that means.
I'm a spiritualist from start to finish, really. I believe in spiritualism. I believe in its philosophy, which are we
What is the
have
mantra of it? What is the
the
core
basis of our
line?
philosophy is 7 principles, and they are, I'll do them very quickly for you. The first
Sure.
one is the brother, is the fatherhood of God. The second is the brotherhood of man. The third is the communion of spirits and the ministry of angels. The fourth is the continuous existence of the human soul. The fifth is personal responsibility. The sixth is compensation and retribution hereafter for all the good and evil deeds done on earth. And the final principle is eternal progress open to every human soul. Those are our 7 principles. That's what we look at. They're the basis of our religion. They're the basis of our philosophy.
What does number 7 mean? Can you explain that one to me a
Well,
little
the
bit?
eternal progress of every human soul. It means that, wherever you're at, whether you're in this world or you're in the next world, you have the opportunity to learn more and more and more.
Do you believe
That
in like a heaven and a hell then?
No, but I believe we create our own heaven and hell
I see.
as individuals.
Okay. Okay.
I don't believe they're geographic locations. I do believe they're states of mind.
Got it. What does it mean to be a minister, in a spiritualist
Well,
minister? What is it?
a
What's your day to day?
spiritualist minister means that I can conduct funerals or naming ceremonies or official services anywhere. But it also means that, I take services. So I do them online most of the time now because I don't travel so much.
Hmm.
But I take services and things like that. But other people could take services too. But as a minister, it's more really about being able to help people on a one-to-one. That's how I see it. That's how I see it. Helping to help give them some kind of. I'm not a counselor. I don't regard myself as a counselor, but I regard myself as a spiritualist and trying to help people who can't cope with life.
Is it mainly like a lot of grief work, like what they do with the Forever Family Foundation kind of stuff, where it's
It
like,
can it can be, but it can also be about someone who feels completely lost
oh yeah,
and lost their identity, they've lost their personality, they've lost everything, and it's people like that that you come across that need your help. But it might be just a few words they need of encouragement and support, and others they might need more than that. It depends on the individual, of course. Yeah.
wow. Um, Saman, this has been great. I really thank you for this. I mean, this is like, yeah, I mean, this is for me looking at this world of mediums, and you've given me so much great information, and especially in how the feelings that a medium gets, and like what they're looking for, and how it. I loved your use of the, talking about frequency and energy, because that's kind of where
Mhm.
we're playing in. And it seems like there's just some similarities in all of these things, and finding those and honing those. And I find that fascinating stuff. Um, and, who's better than, uh, you know, you've been just around it for so long that it means a lot that you've taken the time to sort of walk me through that element of it in your
Very
life.
welcome. Yeah.
I appreciate it.
But I
Thank
think
you.
that I just think that for me, it's not just mediumship. Please Don't misunderstand me.
No.
My work is not just mediumship. It's hopefully helping people to open their minds to a greater power that can help them cope with life. It's not about death. It's about life. We haven't got to
That's not,
worry about death.
isn't that the same sort of thing as like AA in a way?
In a way, yeah, maybe. Yeah, except it's not with alcohol or without.
Right.
It's up to you whether you drink or not.
You
That's
could drink as a spiritualist, is what you're saying. It's like
well, we've got our fifth
we want the
principle
high.
of
We have a
personal.
higher power, but
Yeah, but we've
we
got our
still
fifth principle of personal responsibility, so you can't get away from that one. Yeah.
right. No, that's
But
true.
yeah, but
That's
that's
true.
the point, but it's all about, for me, it's about helping people to realize their power, realize that they've got more than they think, and they can make their own decisions. They don't have to rely on the next person to tell them what to do. You know.
I love
For,
it.
for me,
It's
it's
like
all about empowering people,
yeah.
really.
Listen, I mean, it's great. It's any religion that sort of helps people become better, or and not treat other people like shit at the same time
Hmm.
is great,
Yeah.
right? Like as long as it's like let live and let live, and then mind your own business, live and let live, then by all means, worship whatever, however you like.
Yeah,
It's when you start stepping on other people's freedoms, I guess that it's sort of like, all right, guys, what are we doing here? How do you call that a religion of any kind? But
absolutely.
and this podcast isn't about religion, or it's more like we're focusing really. We want to know what is happening, what is spirits, what is this other world, science, voices, communication that's happening with what you do, with what John does, with what Kathy does, with you know, the, you know in all the different aspects of it, to try to sort of figure out, you know, what is going on, because there's clearly something going on. It can't all be. There's
You
plenty of
can't all
people
be
who believe
making
in
it
it.
up, you
Yeah,
know.
there's a lot of
And I
people.
used to,
Yeah,
that was one of the things that you asked me earlier, what kept me in this, and what keeps me in it is knowing that I have, and no more than anyone else, by the way, but that we have the ability to and the capability to reach out with our minds and get help from that other world, get insight, get information from them that should help us to live as in the best way we can. That's what it's about. And it's not just about giving people messages. That's the smallest part of my job. I do it a lot, but for me, it's the smallest part of my job.
right.
Giving people mums and dads and grannies and granddads, sons and daughters, as great as it is, because you feel you're part of that. That family. That isn't all I do. My job is, I'm very interested in the philosophy of life. And I want to think, what have I got to learn? That's the big one, isn't it? What have I got to learn? What am I learning from this? And so to me, it's all about finding peace at the end of the day, inner peace, how you
Right.
can live comfortably, and in a way where it's not hurting anybody, not affecting anybody else with any, as you say, negativity, but just living life in the best way we know how. And that's what I'm about. That's what I'm about, living. I'm not about death. I've got
Well,
eternity for that.
right. That's a great way. That's a great way to end this. And look,
Okay.
Simone Key, thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Really appreciate you being a guest here for us. And that's a great way to end, and it's a great philosophy to have to go throughout the
Thank
day.
you.
So thank you so much.
All
I
right. Good to
appreciate
see you.
Good to
Take
see
care.
you. Thanks for listening to Splintered Spirits. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time.